All right, let's talk about solving linear inequalities. So what is the difference between a linear inequality and just an equation? So an inequality is stating that two things are not equal. All right, so meaning one thing is going to be greater than and one thing is going to be less than. Now there's a couple of different inequality signs. All right, so we have greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. And we have just greater than and just less than. So the difference between them is a line underneath it. So we have two mouths here, and I like to think of it as we are going to eat the bigger thing. Notice in the top one, kind of think of it as like an alligator. We're going to eat the bigger cupcake. And then here, we're going to eat the bigger piece of pizza. So the mouth will always eat the larger of the numbers. Otherwise, it will not be true. So the first thing we need to kind of talk about is the number line. So the number line is all the numbers can be put on, in essence, a ruler. So all the numbers can be placed in order on, let's just say, a ruler here, all right, or a line. So basically, if you think of a ruler, you have 1, you have 2, you have 3, you have 4, you have 5, and then you have all those little places in between. So up here, okay, let's talk about, we're going to have a positive side of the ruler and a negative side. So let's put 0 in the middle, okay, and then let's just talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then on the negative side of the ruler, we have -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and then we can't fit in -6. But notice even in between, okay, we have fractions. Notice I skipped the space in between because we can have like 1/2 in here, okay? Or we can have 3 halves in here. And then we could have 5 halves. So we can keep doing that in the positive direction and also in the negative direction. So the number line is basically, we can put any number on it, positive or negative, okay? And it can be represented like I did with halves, or it could even be like in quarters, like in between there. Now, we use this number line to help us compare, okay? So numbers that are further to the right, they're going to be larger, and numbers that are to the left are going to be smaller. So for example here, which one's bigger, 6 or 5? Chucky? 6. All right, well, there we go. So we're going to have our mouth open towards the 6. Here, Ava, which one's bigger, -2 or 3? If you're unsure about which one's bigger, let's just think about it as in terms of money. Would you rather owe $2 or would you rather have $3? So Ava, 3. Very good. So we're going to have the mouth open towards the 3. Now, when we have two negative numbers, okay, you notice I don't have -7 on my number line, so it's going to be a little difficult to think about, but I like to think about it in terms of money. Okay, Katie, so would you rather owe $4, and owing's not good, so that's why it's negative, or would you rather owe $7? And of course, Katie, you would say 4. Very good, Katie. 4. The -4 is going to be bigger, okay? So why don't you guys try the ones on the bottom? Be careful with the absolute value. Remember what it corresponds to and what it means. So just try 4, 5, and 6 real quick. All right. So here, 4 is going to be -8 and -5, and -5 is going to be bigger because I'd rather owe $5 than $8. Now for number 5, well, the absolute value of -5 is 5. So we actually are talking about this problem. 5 being compared to 5, and they're going to be equal. Now number 6, Mr. Bonner, that's going to be -7, and we're going to be comparing it to 6. And 6 is going to be bigger than -7. Now we have these things with the square root. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take our calculator, okay? So we come up here to our calculator, okay? Oh. So let's see if I can get this on the same screen at the same time. All right, so let's look at this. All right, so there we go. So the square root of 14. So we have our graphing calculator or calculator here. And I am going to view it as the scientific one. So it gives me all the buttons. So I need the square root. That's going to be this little checkbox thingy here. So I'm going to type in 14, and I'm going to hit that square root, and I get 3.74. So if you guys look at that, this is approximately equal to, okay, and I'm going to use little squiggles, 3.74, and then I'm going to be comparing that to 3.75. So which one's bigger? Well, of course, the 3.75. Now I need to do the square root of 15. So this is where things get a little funky because there's a negative sign out in front. So let's just talk about 15, and I'm going to take the square root of it. So it's going to be negative, because it's a negative square root of 15, so it'll be negative 3.87. And I'm comparing that to -4. And the negative 3.87, because I'd rather owe $3.87 than $4. So that's why I got that. Now 2 1/4 and 2.3 repeating. So 2 1/4 is 2.25. I'm going to compare that to 2.333, go on forever. Now $2.33 is bigger than $2.25, so that's why I'm going to eat that. Now, why do I need to know this? Because all of these numbers correspond to places on the number line. So I can plot all of these numbers. So what we want to do is we actually want to convert all of these numbers here to decimals. So 3, well, that's going to correspond to 3. And negative absolute value of -2, well, the absolute value of -2 is 2. So it's actually going to be -2 because we're talking about the opposite of the absolute value of -2. Now the absolute value of -2, that's just 2. The absolute value of 0 is 0, and we have -1. And these numbers in red are the numbers that I am going to plot on my number line. So first off, my recommendation here is kind of establish where do you want to start on your number line, meaning where do you want to put 0. So I'm going to put 0 somewhere in the middle, right there. All right, and now I've taken care of this number. So now let's go ahead and take care of -1. So that's going to be right there. Let's take care of -2. That's right there. Where does 2 correspond? The 2 would be right here, and 3 would be right here next to it. Now, why did I put them on here like this? Well, we are going to order these from least to greatest. So we plotted all of these. These are the numbers that we kind of didn't talk about was, I didn't plot 1, or I didn't plot 4, 5, okay? -3, -4, -5. And here's the thing, is now, okay, because I've written my numbers over here underneath my original problem, I need to order the original values. All right, so we're going to start, and we're going to read the numbers that occur in red from left to right, because numbers that are further left are smaller. So -2, okay, so that corresponded to the opposite of the absolute value of -2. So that's my smallest, because that occurred right here. Now -1, well, that was at the end. That was just -1, right? 0, well, that was written as the absolute value of 0, so I'm going to put that in. Then we went to 2. That was represented by the absolute value of -2. And then 3, that was our first number, and that was 3. Notice what I did is I plotted my points, okay, on here from what I converted them to as decimals, and then I rewrote them as they were in the original problem. So I know that's a little confusing because of the absolute value, but let's go ahead and view one that's possibly a little bit easier to go about and understand. So here, all right, let's look at this. Pi is 3.14. Then 5.1666. That's what that bar means. 5 1/8. So 1/8. I'm going to type that into my calculator. So I'm going to do 1 divided by 8. And I'm going to get 0.125. So I'm going to write 5 1/8 is 5.125. The square root of 25, I'm going to type that in. That's going to be represented as 5. And then we have 5.25. Okay, so let me drop that down so I'm away from my number line. All right, so let's go ahead and let's establish the types of numbers we're talking about. We're talking about all positive numbers, only up through 5. So what I might want to do here is I might want to start at, let's see, 0, and then I go 1. So why don't we actually, let's scratch that. Let's not even start at 0. Let's start at 1. This is going to give us more room. So 1, and then we're going to count every other. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they go between 3 and 5. So let's plot this number 3.14, which corresponds to pi. So 3.14 is right about here. I'm just going to go ahead and write pi because that was 3.14. 5.166. Well, 5.166 is going to be right about here, and that corresponded to 5.16 repeating. All right, so I took care of that number. I took care of that number. Let's talk about 5 1/8. Well, 5 1/8 is corresponding to 5.125. Well, that's going to be right here, 5 1/8. It's just below 5.166 repeating. Now 5, well, that's right here. That's 5. And then we have 5.25. That's going to be right there. Notice I'm kind of jammed up here. That's why I want to give myself some space. So now that I have to order from least to greatest, I'm going to go ahead and start with pi. That's my number that occurs furthest to the left. Then notice 5 came next, 5. Then 5 1/8 came next. After that, notice 5 was right here. 5 1/8 is right here. This one, don't forget, it corresponded to 5.16 repeating. And then last but not least, that was 5.25. Now number 12. Number 12 I don't need to do anything with because it's already written as decimals for me. Notice in 11, I had fractions, I had square roots, I had a symbol and pi. So I need to go through and I need to just plot these, okay? So my smallest number is -1. So let's start out with, never mind, scratch that. Smallest number is -11. Look. Wow, then I have a bunch of numbers that are around 1. So let's try and plot these. So we have, let's go with, watch this. This is going to seem weird, but I'm going to start with -2. I'm going to go -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. All right, let's plot -1. So I'm going to do this in green. So -1. Okay, this guy right here, we're plotting him right now. -1 is right there. Okay, it's a point. Okay. 0.11. Well, that's going to be right about here. That's 0.11. 0. Well, that's right here. That's 0. Okay. Now, notice they're really close together, so don't view it as, okay, 0.11. It's 0 and 0.11. Negative 11, well, that's way down here. Okay, so like negative 11 is way off my number line. Okay, notice it's way down here. 1.1 is right about here. And we have 1. And that's going to be right there. So now I need to write my numbers from least to greatest. So let's start out with the number furthest to the left. That was negative 11. Then we ran into, when we're going right, we run into negative 1 first, then 0, then 0.11, then 1, then 1.1. Last problem here, okay. Well, now notice I have exponents, I have fractions, I have a square root, I have another fraction in decimal. The decimal is good to go, okay? But those fractions aren't, so I need to know what 3/8 are. Okay, so let's go ahead and use our calculator. We're going to do 3 divided by 8, and we're going to get, okay, for this one, we're going to get 0.375. Square root of 5, go ahead and type that in. Okay, shows you how to do that. So the square root of 5 is going to be, I believe it was 2.233. Okay. So 2.23 approximately, doesn't have to be exact. 4/7, we're going to do 4 divided by 7. That's going to be 0.571. And then how the heck do I do 5 to the negative third? Well, that's why those graphing calculators are really nice, but if you don't have it, okay, well, I'll show you how to do it. So 5 to the negative third, well, you would do 5, this caret button, and then you type in -3, and you're going to get 0.008. But if you have one of these calculators, or like you're using your phone, see, you're going to have to do 5, and then we have to hit this button, and then 3, then that negative button. And notice we get the same thing. One more time, you're going to have to hit 5, then this XY button, and then 3, and then the plus minus to make it negative. And that's going to give us 0.008. Now I got to figure out where are all my numbers. Well, notice I don't have any negative numbers. So let's start with like 0 here. Then I'm going to skip a bunch. Okay, I just want my things to be spread out so it's easy for you guys to look at. So I'm going to skip 2. So I'm going to write 1. I could actually count however I want. I could count it like 0, 1, 2, 3, you know, all these tick marks. But I want you guys to be able to see this stuff. So I can plot 0, skip 2, and then write 1. So I'm going to skip 2 and write 2. Skip 2 and write 3. Okay. So here, let's plot 0.0008. Well, that's going to be right, almost right there. And that corresponds to 5 to the negative third. Now, where's 0.571? Well, I'm not trying to be exact, but I have 0 and 1 here. I'm going to go halfway in between. Okay, I'm going to try and make it look as close to it as possible. That was 4/7. Now I have the square root of 5, so I've already done this one. This one, square root of 5 is 2.23, 2.2. So if we have from 2 to 3, we have 3 sections. We have the left, the middle, and the right. 2.23, okay, it's going to be right about here because these are broken up into thirds. This would be 2 1/3, 2 2/3, and then 3. So 2.23 would correspond to the square root of 5. That's right there. 3/8, well, that is 0.375. So it's going to be right about here. It's going to be 3/8. And then 0.003, well, if 0.008 was right there, 0.003 is going to be right there. So now let's write it. 0.003, 5 to the negative third, 3/8, 4/7, and then the square root of 5. Notice a lot of this stuff is based upon prep work, okay? And that's it for the first section here in inequalities.